Over 70% of children in the country between the ages of 9 and 17 access the internet daily, with the digital world now no longer being a luxury but a necessity. However, with it comes cyberbullying, grooming, harmful content, and algorithmic bias. To speak to us further about this, we are joined on the line by Anzio Jacobs, Project Specialist, African Children's Summit at the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. Mr. Jacobs, thank you so much for taking your time and joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Shasha, and thank you for having me.
Now, what are some of the risks for children online?
I think there are a broad range of risks, but grooming, exploitation, cyberbullying, and access to harmful content are probably the ones that we're most concerned about.
And tell us more about the 6-month initiative that the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund has started.
So the Children's Fund has started a digital safety initiative, not just as a protection mechanism and not just as a way of protecting children, but to empower and groom leadership amongst children, especially in the context of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and AI and increasing digital kind of access. In the next 6 months, what this program intends to do is to bring together researchers, to host multi-sectoral dialogues, and to really have a strong push towards child advocacy within this context. I think you and your listeners would know that our population is younger than it's ever been, and so this becomes increasingly necessary as we move into a digital space where most of our day-to-day activities include some sort of digital access. And even when we think about that digital access, we mustn't forget that even non-smartphones form part of the technologies that sometimes facilitate violence. And so we really want to look holistically at the technological landscape.
And why should Africa's transformation be child-centered? And in your view, how should this be done?
I think we must be child-centered, one, because Africa's demographic is largely children, and they will indeed become our future leaders. Anything that we plan will be experienced by them. And so the implementation of stringent policies around a digital space will ensure future thinking that protects children. I think also it's important that the continent realizes that the risks in this digital space are increasingly deepening, and they're equally deepening inequality in particular. So there is a digital divide, and that digital divide means that some children have access to information while others don't. And why this becomes concerning is that particularly in lower income households, what you find is that parents don't have a good sense of what is going on in the online space, that children that do have access to those online spaces are increasingly experiencing harm. And then you've got the advent of artificial intelligence as well. So previously we've been concerned about who is the person on the other side of the screen that may be causing harm, while more recently we have to think about the movement or the progression of artificial intelligence that is equally capable of harm, and that's a bit harder to manage.
And how should parents and those in authority protect children from harmful online content? What role should they be playing?
I think parents and caregivers alike should really start to open dialogue in the home. Whichever context there is available to have a conversation with a child that has access to technological platforms, we need to start to grow a digital literacy and awareness in our homes, because what some people miss is that even if children don't have smart devices, many children, even without those devices, are still accessing the types of harmful content that are circulating. We need governments to enforce a more child-centered approach to regulation, for government to hold tech companies more accountable. And that work will really start once families begin to engage with AI and technologies and realize that government does have to apply certain pressures and protections, because these protections need to be uniform, especially for those that are most vulnerable. So you're talking about children who are accessing technologies that perhaps don't understand them well enough, and families that are trying to protect those children without quite having sight of what the technologies are doing and what the potential harms in those technological platforms are.
And lastly, what is your call to action?
Our call to action is really to open up across the country in every space possible conversations that think about digital safety and the increasing need for access to technology and technological spaces and technological platforms. The more we speak about about them, the more we can guard and put safeguarding rails around them, the more our families will be equipped to ensure that the types of harms that are being experienced are diminished. And I think more especially, and particularly now in South Africa, we do need parents to be a lot more mindful, because digital platforms are facilitating harm such as abduction, such as sexual exploitation, and such as revenge pornography. And so these are critical elements for every South African household to bear in mind, because if we don't have sight of them, we don't know how to protect the children in this country.
We'll leave it there, Mr. Jacobs. Thank you so much for taking your time and talking to us on Africa Update. That was Anzio Jacobs, Project Specialist, African Children's Summit at the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund in South Africa.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet.